And welcome to another awesome episode of While You're Working Live. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all are having a wonderful morning so far. Super excited to have you joining us for this episode as we discuss a really pertinent topic and really timely topic for pretty much anybody that's watching us on Facebook right now. It has to do with what the heck is going on with Facebook ads and what you can expect in the future. There's been a lot of swirl recently about Facebook. Cambridge Analytica, some of their changes, their tumbling stock prices, all the things are hot topics of conversation. And here in the marketing and business world, we are hyper-focused on this, as this has been a primary platform for a lot of our paid media efforts and a big part of a lot of our campaigns. And today I brought on two awesome guests that are going to help me dive into this topic a little bit further, sharing their real world experience on the platform and what they're seeing and what they're predicting for the future. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our two guests for today. The first one, I will welcome back to the show, Jarrett Shaffer. He joined us a couple weeks ago to talk about full funnel marketing. Jarrett, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me again. And we definitely have the crystal ball of Mark Zuckerberg's mind to, figure out all the stuff that's going on. So I appreciate you having me back. I guess my first round went pretty well. So
yeah, this is a pretty big vote of confidence. We welcomed you back. So don't screw it up this time.
All right. I'll try my best.
And also joining us for the first time, so excited to have him, is Alan Finn. Hey, Alan.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Alan is joining us, and he is from Wordstream out in Boston. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. How's the weather out there? Hopefully a little cooler than what we're having in Texas.
It's absolutely disgusting. It's so humid.
Okay, not much better. So
No.
Guess we won't travel out to see you anytime soon. But thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you, and your awesome native language of wit will add a colorful commentary to this episode. I am sure of that. Well, let's jump right into today's topic. The main thing that we want to cover today are what are the changes that are happening in the Facebook ads platform, what you can expect from those changes. We'll cover a little bit about what is not changing, and then we will also give you a few survival tips on what you can do to make sure that your strategies are shifting in the right direction to combat some of these changes and help your clients or your business better. So the first thing we want to get into are actually what are some of the key changes that are happening within the Facebook ads platform. I know that the first one I'm seeing a lot of are the in-market audiences using partner data is going away, which is a pretty big bummer. Have you guys seen that as you're setting up your Facebook ads yet, Alan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would definitely say that that's the biggest change that could pose a potential issue to anybody's marketing strategy. The ability to use that third-party data, so to target users really granularly based on things like their household income, disappearing. It kind of kills Facebook in the middle of your marketing funnel. It's still pretty easy to capture people with really low intent who maybe just need an introduction to your brand. And it's still really easy to remarket to people who are close to conversion. But those people in the middle who you want to hit with a hyper-targeted message are much harder to find without that information.
Yep. Yeah, and I would want to jump in there too. I think it's interesting. It feels like every day something is changing on Facebook, so you got to really be flexible. We were just talking about before we got on the other day, I was updating budgets in Facebook and using a lot of custom audiences, as you were talking about, in terms of retargeting and remarketing. And in order to update the budget, it said that I had to go in and accept the new terms and conditions for custom audiences. So I didn't know that. It was easy step process, but it was also verifying that I had access to the pixel and that I wasn't trying to do anything sketchy. But it's just one of those things, again, that every single day there's something new, there's some new tweak to the system, tweak to the platform. So you definitely have to be flexible, just kind of take it and play by the rules of what Facebook's kind of putting out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw that this partner data, and I think they're probably weeding it out as they go through the weeks, but I think it's officially maybe all going to be gone as of August 14th is the doomsday date that I've kind of seen. So hopefully everybody's squeezing in their last bit of ads within those awesome hyper-targeted segments, because they will be going away very quickly, as tomorrow is August 1st. Yeah. But I think the next one that I have noticed a couple times, it doesn't happen every time for me, is audience size. Audience size and some of those, predicting numbers that Facebook has so nicely given to us for so long. I've noticed that those are also going away from both, just some of their general targeting audiences, and also I think some of their custom audiences are removing that particular feature too. Have you guys seen that yet?
Yeah, so I remember shortly after the Cambridge Analytica fallout, it came out that there were people who were kind of exploiting audience sizes, where they were paring audiences down as small as they could get, and then almost able to identify individual users. So this is like a safeguard against people doing that sort of thing.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, it really screws up a lot for everybody who isn't nefarious and just wants to advertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, it's interesting too. I think, the audience size from just basic demographics and stuff is kind of frustrating, just to know, how big are you going, rather than, are you just trying to target the world, or are you trying to kind of get more specific that are lower on the funnel? Mm-hmm. Since we focus a lot on custom audiences, I think that's one of the bigger issues as well, just because, we've done things where ultimately over time we want to show that our remarketing audience is growing, and so we have that capability to continue to retarget those people. There's other ways to do it. Obviously, you can track, website traffic through Google Analytics and some other platforms, but it was definitely an easy way to point out and show, like, okay, we're growing, we're going in the right direction. This audience is interested, they're reacting to things. So, definitely have to kind of take that into consideration now as you're moving forward with your ad campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. That, that ability to not only be that advertising platform or help your clients, place ads and find those metrics. But the added value there was to kind of grow some of those remarketing audiences and showcase, the growth over time there. So that will be a little bit of a bummer. But I think that we'll get into this in a few minutes, but some of the strategies that we've discussed and we're kind of starting to implement here at Rogue will still provide value, and I think that you guys will find these interesting and want to give them a try too. So the next thing that I've seen are that APIs, the API platform that Facebook has opened up to developers, is also going away. I'm actually not as familiar with this one. We don't really do too much with the app development front, but they did say that it was being closed. So I imagine that will hurt some people in there. I know they gather data and also just kind of do some discovery and with the open API. Have you guys used that too much?
The only context in which I've had any exposure to that is they shut down the ability to create like fully customized chatbots for a while, and that really derailed some campaigns of some clients. But that's been reopened, and I don't know if that will be affected by their API being completely shuttered.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed with the chatbots, Rogue has a chatbot, and we had to make some changes to ours recently and resubmit some things into Facebook to make sure that we weren't, abusing our subscribers that were getting in there, and kind of let them know just exactly what our chatbot was being used for. So I think, some of that is also good for those who are maybe abusing it in the first place.
Absolutely.
I think from the API perspective, at least my experience in terms of just doing paid media mostly, we've done a couple things for instant articles. So helping with publishers getting instant articles through the platform and having to create an application for that. Obviously, Facebook's still going to accept those. Obviously, it's not as easy to just kind of upload an application for that. There's got to be more of an approval process. But, I think this one, at least from my perspective, was one of the less shocking ones. And at least from an advertiser's perspective, that it wasn't wasn't something that, I necessarily thought about and said, oh man, this is going to really affect any sort of ad campaigns, or even bigger publishers who want to have instant articles or do, more in-depth messenger stuff. I think, granted, you can't just throw it up in a couple of days. There's going to be more approval process, but I think overall that's probably a good thing. Not being able to just tap into all of the breadth of Facebook's data from people who just want to, do nefarious things on there.
Way, dun dun dun. But we also have some awesome things that Facebook is doing to help give advertisers and businesses insight, which Alan, you told me about one a couple weeks ago, and we've started to use that here at Rogue, and it's definitely great for advertisers. I mean, maybe not so great if you are the business and trying to get an edge up on your competition. Can you explain that new feature a little bit for us?
Yeah, so Facebook introduced the info and ads tab on pages, and it allows you to go into the page of any business that has one on Facebook. You can see if there have been changes to the name of that page and its history, when it was created. But more valuable from an advertiser's perspective is that you can see every active ad they're running, and you can segment that by geo. So if you know that one of your competitors advertises in the United States and the United Kingdom, for example, you can look at how their strategy might differ, and you can use that to, zag where they are zigging and say the exact opposite, or just inform your creative if they have a great idea. Like, there's nothing that says you can't run through the business pages of anything, any company on the planet that runs anything on Facebook, and screenshot their best ads, make a swipe file, and use that to inform your own creative moving forward.
That's super interesting. I think just because as Facebook and both, Google and LinkedIn and all of these platforms, I think are really trying to refocus everybody on that they're content platforms first. And so that to me is Facebook's way of saying, like, hey, if there's a competitor out there that's doing really great content, go and try and do something similar, right? Like, put more great content on our platform so that people can stay on our platform. Obviously, with the stock price going down, a lot of their, ad revenue for Q2 was down. I think that they're definitely saying that, the revenue is going to follow the user base. And so if the user base is disappointed or not engaged, then that's the main issue there.
So just to piggyback on that, I was reading an article this morning on TechCrunch that was talking about how a big reason for the drop was that Sheryl Sandberg mentioned that transitioning away from the news feed and towards stories, it would be difficult to figure out how to monetize stories to the same degree that the news feed is right now. Obviously, basically making miniature TV commercials it is much harder than throwing up some banner creative and 2 lines of copy. And like that definitely has the potential to really impact the advertising strategies of anybody, but particularly small businesses.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point and kind of transitions us into the next phase of what we were going to talk about, which is what businesses can do to combat some of these changes and what that really means for how they think about their strategy. And so both of you touched on the fact that a lot of these platforms are reminding users and businesses that, first and foremost, they are they're content based, and that's where they were founded at. And that's what they were meant to do is, share and inform content from those people and businesses that you care about the most. And so I think that one of the things that you just made a really good point on, Alan, was that, your ads are maybe going to have a little bit different way about them within the Facebook ads platform. But I think that what this shift is going to do is focus everybody more on the quality of the metric that they're getting, whatever that might be that you decide to focus on, rather than the quantity. And that the quantity has been so cheap historically, but I think that people are going to have to realize that they're going to have to pay a little bit more for that.
So yeah, I think in what we are losing as advertisers from a targeting perspective, we're almost getting back in like new forms of creative. So Facebook has a ton of ad platforms and that's not even including what you can do with Messenger or what you can do on Instagram. And while we don't necessarily have the ability to find tiny subsets of people and hyper target our copy towards them, what we can do is engage with different kinds of creative, whether that's something as simple as a carousel or a short video, or something far more in depth, like a Canvas ad. And they are releasing tools. For example, in the middle of this month, they launched ad creation through the Ads Manager app. And it's just super quick ways to make more compelling creative that will engage people. And maybe you do have to pay a little bit more to get the clicks, and maybe they're not the perfect audience, but if you can drive that initial engagement, then you can begin remarketing to people. And that's where I think Facebook's like greatest value lies at this point in time.
Exactly.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, one of the things that we've noticed is, 3 or 4 years ago, anyone could kind of go on Facebook and throw up an ad, and it would potentially have good metrics and it would work well and you'd get the reach. I think what Facebook is now focused on is the type of audience. I mean, that's why they purchased Instagram. That's why they're kind of diversifying. And so you kind of have to gauge maybe on a broader scale of what your message is to the right audience. For example, is Instagram the right placement? Is Facebook the right placement? Is Messenger the right placement? And if you're putting your exact content on those specific channels, I think you'll have a better results. And it's also about your specific client. We've had clients that have ran on other platforms like LinkedIn or versus Facebook. And, it's also learning about what the user is actually doing on the platform. So for example, on Facebook, there's a lot of people that are using Facebook for news or for other, different types of engagements with family members and that kind of a thing. And they may not be in the mindset for a career change or something else that might be better fitted for LinkedIn. So I think understanding where your audience is and at what part of the funnel and at what part of their user journey and where they are on that placement or that platform is important. And then creating content that's going to engage them in that way.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I think that just touches on something that we were talking about before we went live today, and that's just, it's going to put a bit more of emphasis on really understanding where your customer is at in their basically their sales journey. And the better that you understand that, the better that you're going to know where to place your budget and at what point by platform, which is something we talked about in one of our previous episodes with Jarrett about the full funnel marketing strategy. And so I think that that's just going to, the shift from Facebook and all these changes, hopefully will bring a better understanding or force businesses and, agencies alike to have a little bit more of a deeper focus on less how many millions of impressions can we get for a cent, and more where is it that our customer is at in their journey, and what platforms do we need to utilize to make that marketing mix and that stack work best for us across the different phases.
I would say even before any of that, and Jarrett, I'm glad you mentioned figuring out what your customers are doing on different channels. Figuring out who they are in the first place is super important too, because that will inform everything from the visuals you're using to the tone with which you speak. Developing customer personas might seem kind of like a trite activity, but it's super helpful, and especially when you're losing out on valuable targeting methods, having other ways that you can identify who your target demographics are and what they're interested in and what their pain points are, how you can provide solutions to those pain points is necessary. And that doesn't just go for Facebook, that goes for every channel.
Yep. No, I totally agree. Actually, that's funny that you brought that up. Even I feel like people, and I forget this sometimes too, when we do remarketing, right? You think like, oh, there's just this wide remarketing audience that I have access to. Even in your remarketing audience, there's different age groups. We were talking about this with a client yesterday. They're like, well, what about, the families of this MBA program, students that are, 40 to 60, that's going to be a different message than someone who may be interested in an MBA program at 25, right? So we sometimes as marketers just kind of lose that and say, oh, it's a first party data, it's first party audience, it's fine, it looks good, right? And so it is interesting to kind of take a step back and say, who is going to be a part of this customer journey? Where are they? What type of person are they? What age group, demographics, and you can still target all of those things on Facebook. So it's still a very, very valuable platform.
And you have so many tools with which to reach them on Facebook and Instagram and through Messenger once you have identified them. Like a certain kind of creative might work better with demographic X than demographic Y. You have so many opportunities within the platform to split test. It's like one little slider, and you can have a permutation. So it really pays to like get as granular as you possibly can.
I think it makes marketers, I'll put this out there, a little less lazy. I think it makes us focus and have the strategy up front rather than just, saying, hey, let's go launch a campaign and just see what it does. And I think that's important. I think that's important even for the consumer. I mean, for me as a consumer, I don't want to see, blasted out, Geico ads all over my Facebook feed. I want to have things that are specific to me. And it's going to, I have to say that, I have to kind of put myself in my own consumer shoes, when I'm looking for a new car or something like that, like, they've got to resonate to me as well. So kind of putting yourself in that shoe from your own marketing perspective is helpful for sure.
Yep. I think these are all really great strategies that our viewers can kind of take in and digest and really apply to what they are seeing with their Facebook ads and just ads in general. Kind of some of those takeaways here are, step one is to really understand who your customer is. Take the time to develop those personas, understand, just exactly who those audiences are. And then as you move into, developing and understanding what your customer journey is and really figuring out what kind of platforms you want to, mix in with that funnel and what's going to work for you, I think this only is going to help you get more granular and more specific with where you place your budget. And it's going to help you reshift. And as Jarrett so aptly said, make marketers a little less lazy and figuring out that strategy beforehand, and then placing it, having that specific, A/B tests or things that you're trying to learn. And then what you learn from that, you can apply as you continue to iterate on these campaigns and keep going. So I think those are all really good tips. So if we were to take another step and have our little crystal ball into what Mark Zuckerberg's thinking for the future and just in general what we've seen on paid ad platforms, what do you think are some other potential shifts that might happen as we continue on through 2018 and maybe on into 2019 that you think that we should keep in mind or keep in our back pocket?
Definitely more red tape. You already see this with political ads, and you see it with cryptocurrency ads. There's a huge verification process for that kind of stuff. You have to really jump through a lot of hoops to prove that you're not scamming people. And I wouldn't be shocked if part of the privacy initiatives that Facebook rolls out bring those kind of restrictions to other industries as well.
Yep. I totally agree with that. I think the red tape is going to be a huge, continue to be something that we have to deal with. I think, it's kind of back to my first point is be flexible and understand how the platform is working. I've always said that I don't think, a billion person essentially ad network or social media network that makes, billions of dollars a year is going to go away overnight. So it's still very, very important in terms of the marketers, tool set. But I do think that there's going to be continued push towards that privacy model to get everybody back into trusting Facebook and understanding what Facebook's all about. I also understand too that with their acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp and other things, I feel like Mark Zuckerberg, if I had the crystal ball, is going to either try and repair what he can on Facebook and kind of, try and position it for future success. But then if that's not as successful as he wants it to be, he's going to go find something else to build another audience. So, it's definitely important not just to, think of Facebook as just Facebook, think of Facebook as this entity that is looking for different audiences, looking for different opportunities. And so it's important to watch that as well.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I read some stat the other day, and it was like 60% of Instagram users don't know that Instagram is owned by Facebook.
All right.
So
it's crazy. I find it hilarious when I read articles and they're like, oh, Facebook doesn't have the millennial user or whatever. And I'm like, but they do because it's Instagram and that's a part of Facebook ads. But, it's interesting.
I mean, deceptive is not the right word, but you can use Instagram as your only placement in a campaign to reach people who might not typically engage on Facebook. And if you have introduced them to your brand over and over again on Instagram, in the event you try to get them to take up mid or low funnel action on Facebook, they're increasingly likelier to do so because you've already like built equity with them in a channel they actually care about. Versus a place where they can see what their uncle wants to say about X, Y, or Z.
I was blown away the other day. I had used Facebook as a placement, in other campaigns, and it had worked, but I've kind of noticed people don't like to leave Instagram. It's, since it's on your mobile app, they want to stay within the platform. But there was a specific campaign that was more retail focused, like pottery and stuff, and they were getting conversions from stories. They were actually putting ads in stories and getting sales, and I had never seen that before. And so that kind of opened my eyes as like, if it's the right content and it's the right audience and it's, very visual focused, then it can still work. So that goes back to the audience, that goes back to what type of content you're putting. That, my kind of thought was, oh yeah, Instagram's great for a brand awareness play. It can also convert if it's the right type of content that you're putting out.
And all these things, they work until they don't work anymore, or they make another change on us in Instagram. So that very well might be the case. I think that if I were to make a prediction, I think we're going to see a shift and maybe more exploration into having a variety of platforms and not putting all of our marketing budget eggs into one basket, aka Facebook. My hope is that we can have some more conversations, and this has been a big enough story that clients and businesses alike will be a little bit more open to maybe spending a little bit more for some LinkedIn ads, because that's where their audience is. They're going to be more expensive, but if that turns into $1 million client, that $10,000 spend doesn't look so big after that, right? And I think that a lot of these other different platforms that are growing and really have an engaged community. Just last night, I had a neighborhood incident, and everybody was going nuts on the Nextdoor app, chatting with each other and talking about things. And I know that they have advertising on there because we've explored it before, but it's super expensive. But at the end of the day, if that's where your audience is, and it's going to yield you that particular end goal, whatever that might be for your business. My hope is that it's going to start shifting conversations into more exploration in some of these different, more niche communities.
Yep.
Well, that is all I have for us today. Do you guys have any final thoughts for our viewers, or any other things you want to add before we get on out of here?
I guess just piggybacking off what you just said, like diversifying where you are advertising is super important. You can't just lean on a single platform because it's very easy to have the rug pulled out from under you. So not shirking things like the display network, or like something like Gmail ads, like reach people in as many ways as you can. And it's really cheap to do so there. And particularly on the display network, you can use affinity or in-market audiences to still get in front of the right people and then remarket to the same folks on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you please.
No, I totally agree. And I think, with the future of, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, everybody trying to kind of have different ad units. I think even display is going to change. Banner ads are going to change. I mean, I've even seen a couple things where you can have like quizzes and games within a banner ad placement, which is crazy. Oh, wow. So yeah, it is definitely kind of looking out for the next new thing, but also understanding that you have to A/B test, right? I think it all comes back to testing things and learning and always be testing. I think it's important to set your foundation, and that foundation may be something from, retargeting in PPC or Facebook and Instagram or whatever, and that works, but always say, okay, hey, this month let's put a couple $1,000s in this new channel and see if it works, and maybe it's going to become a part of our foundation. So and even with creative, have the creative run for a month or two and then say, hey, let's inject a new one and see, that may be the best creative that we have, but if we'll never know if we don't add another piece of creative just to see if that does it a little bit better. So always be testing. Like you said, these things change all the time, and so it's important to try new things and not abandon what you've been doing before that was successful, but adding kind of different branches to that going forward.
Absolutely. Diversifying what you're doing and stay agile, because I think that's the main keys to staying on top of your marketing. Well, thank you guys both for joining us today. I think this is a really great conversation, and I hope that our viewers get a lot of good insights from this. As usual, you can find this blog post or up as a blog post over on Rogue Think I'll be sharing that link with you guys here shortly. We will also be posting some additional resources that we have all read and probably discussed a little bit here on the episode today. So that way you guys can dive into those and read those a little bit more extensively. And we will see you back here next week. Hopefully everybody has a good rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Later.